I love it. Okay.
So afternoon in the UK, I think morning where Dr. Northrup is. You can tell by the smile on my face how happy I am to be speaking to you, Dr. Northrup. I have been listening to your work for years, actually, long before the last year and a half sort of slapped us all round the face. So before I introduce you to my audience, I think all who know you, but how are you? How are you doing at the moment?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Last night I had an event where I decided to tell the Republican Party. Now, by the way, I don't care about either party, and I think they're both corrupt. So therefore, I'm in a very free space about it. But I was invited to do a town hall for the Sagadahoc County Republican Party. And, my usual topic, what's in the shots, all of that kind of thing. But what I wanted them to know is that medical freedom is the civil rights movement of the 21st century, a term which I got from my colleague, Kevin Jenkins of the Urban Global Health Alliance down in Newark. And I met Kevin early on last year. And I wanted to say to them, as I was hoping to inspire them as public servants. That's a completely different thing than a politician. I trust no politician, none of them. If you're a career politician, I'm going to assume, I'm really just going to assume that you are corrupt. And
Yes.
You'll have to prove. It's kind of like, okay, if a man is really, really good looking and charming, I'm going to assume that he's a narcissist until proven otherwise. He would have to prove to me that he's worth being around when they're that charming. And, so anyhow, I wanted to say to them, a tidal wave is coming and you can get to higher ground. And if you don't, you're going to drown. So the people in our audience here, the group that we all formed in our state of Maine called Maine Stands Up, I said, we're nonpartisan. We don't care about your gender. We will tell you that we know that it's hard. It's easier to come out as a non-binary transgendered individual than it is to come out as someone who is for health freedom. We know that, but we're gathering more and more and more and more and more and more. And we are a force to be reckoned with. And then I just happen to know the history of the Civil War and our state of Maine. And there was this thing called the Battle of Little Round Top that won the Civil War for the North. And Joshua Chamberlain from a town just north of me, Brunswick, Maine, led the charge of the Battle of Little Round Top. And his battle cry was, "Hold the line, boys." And they fixed their bayonets. They were outnumbered 4-1. Fixed their bayonets and just went screaming like banshees against the rebel forces. And they scared them to death and they won because those forces thought that there were way more of them. There weren't. And so that's how I feel about people like you and me and Janine. And there are actually millions of us. Most people have been afraid to say something. And it's interesting that Tom Rentz is going to launch, I think, an anti-defamation suit against those of us who've been targeted globally.
Yeah.
And so what I did was yesterday as an exercise is I went through the press, the local press and the national press, and then it became international, to look at all the times that my name has been defamed. And it's a lot. And I understood as I was going through it and I saw the enormity of it, all starting with a fluffy piece in Maine Women's Magazine of me wanting to get married and dancing tango and all of that. And then, but what really happened is I testified against mandates at the State House. And with, that stuff is a matter of public record with peer-reviewed literature and all of it. And then the attacks began, venomous, violent attacks on Facebook and the press and all. And I remember thinking, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Like, By that time, my career was so solid, and I'd had so many wins and New York Times bestsellers and appearances on Oprah and the Watkins Spiritual 100 and Reader's Digest Most Trusted, that I knew this was ridiculous. But I was groomed, as it were, for standing up and opening my mouth. Most people have not been. I mean, most people are still afraid of their husband's criticism or their father's criticism, let alone the entire global press. So I know that there are beyond millions of us, and as each person stands up, it makes it easier for the next person. And so I just wanted this group to know that just wait. And I also said, in my career, I've always been 20 years ahead of where the medical profession is, whether it's delayed cord clamping, whether it's bioidentical hormones, folic acid in pregnancy, omega-3 fats in breast milk. It always about 20 years ahead, and then it always catches up. And so I said to them, so if I were you, I would get ahead of this and I would make this platform part of your campaign if you would like to get elected as a public servant, not a career politician. But even if you're a career politician and you're self-serving, do it, then still do it. And there's great, isn't there, Catherine? There's great freedom in no longer being afraid of any of them or any of it. And to really, I spent so much of my life in my marriage, in my profession as a holistic doctor, ready for the hammer to fall.
Yeah.
Ready to find the pink slip in the doctor's mailbox. You're no longer allowed to practice here. I lost my professorship of OBGYN in the 90s from the University of Vermont College of Medicine after I wrote The Wisdom of Menopause. So, it's sort of one thing after another, but now where I am is this wonderful place of power, which is this. I have no respect for Dartmouth Medical School, for Tufts New England Medical Center, for the American College of OBGYN, for the American Board of OBGYN, for the New York Times, for CNN, for the Washington Post, for Mother Jones. No respect whatsoever. And that's a very different place to be than, oh, I'm so afraid they're going to say something nasty about me. Well, once you are named one of 12 people on the entire planet responsible for 70% of what they refer to as disinformation, which you happen to know is the truth, and now increasingly we have all the data, that's a new world. And then once you know that you have all of the warrior avenging angels at your beck and call by the spiritual authority that comes through you as a human being made in the image of God, once you've got that, you become unstoppable. And also, when you're not afraid to die, it's like, I got a lot of great people on the other side cheering me on. And I think my mission here is not done. But if it is, so what? So we're at that. I love the way when you and Janine, and you tell her the right things to ask, which I love. Can you ask the cards? That. And, I've gotten so interesting that this year, starting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Clay Clark's group, I have found myself talking with huge groups of people who identify as Christians, but I mean the kind of Christians where they mean it, like they mean it. Mm. And they'll come up to me and say, it's on my heart to pray for you. And they'll put their hand on my shoulder and do a spontaneous prayer. So I've learned how to pray in that way. And it's very, very moving. It's as though this group, this Christian group, and the group that I've always been part of, which is more like your group with Janine, with tarot and with crystals and with spirit guides and animals, you know, ravens and all of that. Those two have come together in such a miraculous way. And I think that's what's happening, is that we have the family of humanity coming together, and we don't have time to fight with each other about, well, you know, you're Christian, so I can't go near a tarot card. It's like, I've heard Janine talk about that, and I have so appreciated it. There is no power in the card. The power is in the intention of the person using the card. And they're an oracle. If you want to use the Bible as an oracle, use the Bible as an oracle.
It's so, oh, just so wonderful what you were saying there, but because we all talk about connection, don't we? But if you're really truly connected, all these things do come together. And, you know, most thing is about, and most of you and I both in natural health, you are one of the world leaders in natural health, particularly in women's health, but in all areas. And it's always this balance of science and nature and intuition. And you take any one of those out of the equation and it falls over very quickly. Yes. Which is what's been so special about what you've been doing. As you're saying, you've been doing this for years, long before the current situation. And I suppose you can see how all of this has prepared you so well for the role that you've played over the last year and a half. Oh, without, okay, so, you know, the big backstory talk about preparation. I'm a Libra. So relationships, and I have Jupiter in the 7th house. And, you know, that's in Capricorn, but it's in the house of Libra. So relationships have been huge in my life. And of course, the search for the beloved, like, when will I be fully met, right, in relationship? So I was back in 2017, met the absolute love of my life, who happened to be, and this is where God is phenomenal, happened to be a PhD epidemiologist, public health guy who'd been all over the world with the World Health Organization. And he says to me, when the mandates for 72 mandated shots for children came up at the state level, because this began to happen, I saw the creep of this with the measles outbreak at Disney World in 2015. And then I started to hear the press banging the drum of measles is so deadly. No, it isn't, but you know, it's for another day. And so I watched it creep in the same way that I have seen in women's magazines, how big pharma creates a problem and then gives you a solution. So a perfect example of that was seasonal birth control pills. What they wanted to do was sell a particular form of birth control to women. So in women's magazines, about 3 years before, they would start to have articles about how dangerous it was for women to have a period every month. Chronic incessant ovulation. I kid you not, that this was associated with ovarian cancer. So let's plant the fear, and then we can sell you what we want you to see, which is a birth control pill where you have a period only 4 times in a year. Well, any gynecologist knows you can manipulate that and do that with any birth control pill out there, and all of which are synthetic. But anyway, so I know how this whole thing works. And I knew about the Flexner report and, you know, and the Spanish flu, and that's all standard knowledge for a holistic physician. All right. So I meet the man of my dreams. He is a PhD epidemiologist. And I thought that the relationship would founder on the rocks of childhood shots, that agenda. But it turns out, because he's left-handed and actually knows how to think, that he said, you're right. Wow. I mean, he read the literature and, you know, began to change his mind, which is a miracle. And then he said to me, well, why don't you go and testify in front of the State House? Because he was very political. And he said, they're not that bright. Go and do it. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't think I'd ever do anything like that in my entire life. And so he helped me with my testimonies and the public hearings, and the amount of literature on why we do not need these things mandated is overwhelming. And that's just for the 72 approved childhood shots, with 200 more in the pipeline. Plus, I had worked with a lot of people who had vaccine injured children
Okay, so I knew that, and I knew the backstory, and Andy,
Wakefield.
Andy Wakefield, and how he'd been Wakefielded in a huge way, and so I was used to all of that. So I go up there and I do the testimony, and then so remember, the wind beneath my wings is an epidemiologist, absolute world authority in public health.
Mm.
So that's what God sent. Now he's no longer with us, and that's another story, but wow. So that prepared me. And then he was completely shocked by the blowback that happened. And he wrote to all of his public healthy, he could call them the public healthy buddies. And thank God he's on the other side. First of all, it's a lot easier for him, and he's a guide for me. But he never would have been able to tolerate this political situation, because he referred to himself as an old lefty, and was all about the party that's currently running this planetary situation. But at that moment in time, imagine. So that was so empowering for me, because for the first time in my entire career, I had a man, I used to say to him, you have the kind of mind that has persecuted me my entire career. So we had that, but the love match was incredible. It was like, okay, this is what the twin flame relationship is, like unbelievable respect and love, and all that other stuff meant nothing. But to have that kind of affirmation of what I knew in my mind, and it's like having the patriarchal seal of approval on steroids that said, go for it. What you know and what you feel is valid. It was like the final piece for me, such a gift, the final piece. And from then on, that's when I began to do my, my nightly thing on Instagram and Facebook, because I could see that what was happening to me must be happening to everybody. And, because by then I was a white supremacist, and I was a racist, and I was a QAnon conspirator, whatever that was. And I was this and I was that. And the criticism kept coming. And at the same time, I was listening to Charlie Ward, and I was listening to that incredible Dutch researcher who did The Fall of the Cabal, Mickey Willis. I just met Mickey, the Plandemic series. I listened to Mike Smith, I think it is, Out of Shadows Official. And what's interesting is I'm one of those people who, it's interesting that Janine, when she talks about that, it was the cards, it was the oracles, it was the signs that changed her mind about Mr. T. What happened to me about Mr. T is in the spring of 2020, when the whole thing began, I had 2 dreams about Mr. T that woke me up from a deep sleep. And I remember, because one, it was 5 a.m. and I had to get into the bathtub, which is what Moon in Pisces, where I had to just get water on me, because in this dream, I was on the team, Mr. T's team, medical team, and he was doing rallies. And my job was to go into the tent and do his EKG and do his vital signs and make sure he was physically healthy. And when I was doing that, he would talk to me about my career and when did I write Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. And I woke up from the dream, which was very real, absolutely stunned. And I remember thinking, oh boy, this person is not who we've been led to believe he is. And those dreams happened in the spring of 2020. I haven't had any since, but I just knew nothing is as it seems. But again, I was prepared for this by my whole career. Then the spring of 2021, or the winter of 2021, because I began to have meetings at my house in December of 2020, because I realized that was the most important thing, to bring people together, because we were being separated. So I knew it must be something about bringing people together that was important. And it turned out to be life-saving for many of us. Like, okay, we're going to get together. And then I'd put a sign on my door, peaceful protest in process, because, you know, you could go out and burn buildings and throw bricks and have a protest, but we couldn't get together more than, you know, 3 in a home. So I'd have people come into my home. Then that same winter of 2021, another guy shows up at my house, also named Ron. So I knew Ron had sent him. My Ron had sent him.
Yeah.
And he is a lawyer who has represented victims of medical terrorism in Guatemala. These are people infected with syphilis by the US Public Health Service and the Rockefeller Foundation, and the same names at Johns Hopkins who are behind the current situation. And because of his background, he could also see what was going on. Same names, all of the rest of it. And so our group got together to fund him to file a lawsuit against our governor. And since then, he has emerged as a major warrior, working with Rhino Fulmick and Tom Rentz. But it all started with Pam Popper, Make Americans Free Again. And Pam just called the whole thing fact-free hysteria. And so she started Make Americans Free Again and kept telling us on a mastermind group, start Thursday night meetings. Anyone who would say, I'm a filmmaker, what can we do? She'd say, start Thursday night meetings, start Thursday night meetings. And it is the truth that the meetings that you hold, grassroots in your neighborhoods, bringing people together. I would have people out on the street and they'd say, I listen to your videos every night, you know, the little Instagram and Facebook. I listen to those. Oh, really good. What's your name? I put the name in my phone and then I put under it so I could find it again, Warriors of the Radical Light. And so when the time came to hold my first meeting, I just had names of some like-minded people. And I called them up and I said, I'm going to have a meeting here at my house. And then that kind of grew. And now we have 22 different communities around my state, all meeting, all different. And the one thing is medical freedom. But as what you've said, Catherine, here we are. It's 1 year later. I'm no longer afraid that the governor is going to come to my door and shut me down. And we believe that because of our lawsuit, because the governor is in our crosshairs, and because it's an election year, she's probably not about to lock us down again. Yeah. I think she would if she could. And so because we're active, it's not happening, which is really true everywhere, because this has always been, remember way back in the spring of 2020, I would listen to Magenta Pixie and all that. And all the intuitive people would say, we need to come together as humanity, but nobody knew how to do that. I didn't know how to do that. So I thought, well, I guess we'll just start in my house, coming together. Now, we were doing a lot of Zooms with Sasha Stone and Kevin Jenkins and David Martin, and all the people would be together on Zooms. What can we do? But it turns out that the most important thing anyone can do is one other person in their home area, because humanity is going to win this from the ground up. There will be no more central solutions. This person on high, the savior, coming in, riding in like Braveheart and saying, we're going to take it back for you. Now, having said that, I do believe leaders are going to emerge on that level. And when I've gotten together, I've gone to almost all of the Clay Clark events, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, places I never thought I would be, you know, what they call the flyover states. I would, you know, East Coast, West Coast, New York City, Boston, that's been my my wheelhouse. Yeah. But now I realize there's this whole incredible group of wonderful people in the heartland, the middle of the country, people who are for faith, family, and freedom, the absolute basis of society. And then I see the way the deep state dark cult has ripped apart the, as Oracle Girl calls them, bonds of affection. We are held together by bonds of affection.
Mhm.
And that's what they've been trying to pull apart, the bonds of affection. And then they've been caught up, many people, in what Kevin Jenkins calls the rapture of hatred.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a problem. Mm.
Yeah. And so here we are, we've all found each other. So Janine talks about the soul family. And I listen to you, and I listen to Janine, and I listen to Michael Jaco, and then I've met many of these people at the various events. I did more traveling in 2021 on airplanes than almost, I've got trips coming up everywhere. I can't believe that I am out there flying, not wearing a mask in the airport, to just see if I can practice my personal sovereignty. And nothing ever happens. And if
Yes.
someone came up and said, please put your mask on, I'd say, oh, fine. I'm not going to push up against it. I put the mask on and walk by and take it off. So this is what is. Thank you, Deep State Dark Cult. You have united humanity. You have done it. Well done. And then I met that wonderful Jimmy Levy, the hip hop artist.
Right.
His songs are #1. They've been #1 and 2 on the pop charts. Welcome to the Revolution. Check him out, Jimmy Levy, on Spotify. His songs have become the anthem, the global anthem for what's happening. He's got one, Out of the Matrix, Welcome to the Revolution. His top 3 songs. He used to work in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And he said, when I worked in Hollywood, I was suicidal. Now I'm working for Jesus. And the songs are incredible, but he's not. So he's this giant talent, hip hop artist with the background of the, Out of the Matrix. And this is a war, this is a war on the children. This is a war on religion. And those are like the bagpipe marching songs for the family of humanity. And I met Gene Decode, with all.
Amazing. He's amazing, isn't he?
He is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all happened.
Yeah, Dr. Northrup, it's the connections that have been made are so strong. People are really finding who they're aligned with, and really appreciating such a diverse range of talents that just wouldn't have been spoken about, or these people wouldn't have been coming before. So it is wonderful how those connections are so strong now, and getting stronger by the minute. I mean, Mel Kay is a really great friend of mine, who I know is a friend of yours as well. And these connections are so strong and so powerful now. It's really giving a lot of people, however much they feel they can or can't speak out within their families, within their communities, an extra boost to say, actually, I'm not mad, I'm not alone, I am part of a very big group of people that really are going to take responsibility for shaping our future.
That's exactly right. And then what one of the questions that I would get at the beginning is, well, how are you going to do this? And I said, I have no idea.
Yeah.
God will show me how to do this. And that's what happens. Last night, I had one of our legislators, a true public servant, staying over at my house before she went out to the state house. And she's putting together a sort of a plan for moving forward. This is the contract for our state. We all need something positive to move forward to. When I wrote Goddesses Never Age, it came from what I didn't want, which is, I do not want to live out the rest of my life as a single, bitter, postmenopausal woman living alone with cats. Okay, good. Let's start there. I'm going to prove that does not need to be my reality, despite everything that is around me in the press. Yeah. I'm not doing it. So therefore, because I knew how the universe works, the law of attraction being the main law, but I also know just because something bad is happening, it didn't mean you created it. That's what your astrologic chart is. The astrologic chart is, this is the script that you've been given. Now, how you play this is up to you, but this is the script.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've still got that amazing thing called free will.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think is, it's been fascinating to see how many people have forgotten that they have free will.
Well, here's the thing, and sometimes I say this jokingly, but you no doubt saw the CEO of One America, this gigantic insurance company, life insurance company, where he points out that the number of deaths between the ages of 18 and 64 are up 40% over what they've ever been in the history of the industry. And if you want to really know the numbers on anything, go to an insurance company, because those actuary people are a whole other species of human, because they are just going to tell you what is going to happen so they don't have to pay out more money. So when we have an excess of 140,000 deaths in the working age people, 18 to 64, every single month that they're going to have to pay out, then here's what we know. There's a whole lot of people who are going to recycle. And here's the way I like to think of it, is they get to the other side, they go, what was I thinking? And then they come in, you know, like ready to go, helping to build the new earth. One of my projects, and we were talking about moving forward, one of my projects for 2022 is a dating site for people with golden DNA. And
I love that. My friend and I were talking about this a year ago. It's such a great idea.
Yeah, well, I was too, but I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then a couple of really successful real estate and tech entrepreneurs approached me because they have young children. And these guys have said, and like all good fathers, wow, I can protect my little girls now, but what about when they start dating? And, you know, and I facetiously say, yeah, because you don't want grandchildren with a tail. So,
although I've always wanted a tail, but not the type they're giving us. Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, so we decided they had been looking for the face of it. They needed someone who would be the face of this. And so they approached me because they had the idea long ago, but it needs to be done right. And of course, this is not just about romantic dating. This is about how are we going to create the communities that need to be created in the future as the portals are closing for the lizards. That's the way I see it. It's like the portals are closing. I'm also a big fan of Lee Carroll and Cryon, and love his work. And he said for years, the portals will be closing. They literally vibrationally will not be able to stay. And Alex Collier, whose work I adore, he basically said they have nowhere to go. This is a regressive race that has been using humanity as a food source, either through Lush for our emotions of anger, fear, sadness, or literally through eating humans. And the time is over. And Project Looking Glass actually found that as well, that the time has come. Nothing, that's where they got the phrase, nothing can stop what's coming. Nothing can stop what's coming. So they're on the way out. So like any gigantic lizard, they're slashing their tail around in the death throes of the old order, trying to do as much destruction as they possibly can at the last minute. So therefore, you know, they took down my PayPal account and I called them and, you know, I'm talking to the person. So can you tell me how to get this reinstated? No, we cannot reinstate it. Why is that? Well, because you violated one of our rules. And I said, where can I find those rules? Well, you can go to the website and you can see them under legal. And so we read every single one of them. And of course, I haven't violated a single one of them at all. I mean, there's no drug trafficking here. There's no prostitution, none of that. And so then you just realize, keep going, And
Yeah.
as Kevin Jenkins said, every time they do something more draconian, bring it on, because what it does is it wakes people up more and more and more. It's like, okay, so now you've had 3 injections and you have to double mask now, and your 2-year-old needs to mask. And you're going to keep this going. It's fun to watch at this point. I do realize that there's been enormous amount of grieving and letting go. I mean, just listening to Janine's show about her own family and
Yes.
having a very close, big family and being shut out by your family feels like death. It feels terrible. But that is part of, I believe, our evolutionary path now, is to understand that these are the people that with whom you came in to learn a few things. Like, what I like to say is, yeah, I've had a pretty good career in women's health, but it was all just to heal my relationship with my mother. Let's be clear. I mean, yeah, I mean, I know what that was about. Just like I met a guy named Bart Belogi, who was the inventor of chemotherapy. And he came over to Little Rock, Arkansas to run the multiple myeloma clinic. And it turns out that his father was a Nazi and he gassed people and killed them. And Bart was a little boy at that time. And Bart now uses chemotherapy. Same thing, by the way. It's all evolved from that. Only he brings them back. Do you see? So it's an evolution. His father killed people. He uses the same kind of situation, but then brings them back. So we all need to be looking at what is our piece in this amazing resurrection story. And if you haven't seen The Matrix 4 Resurrection, I'd recommend seeing it, because it is amazing. And I finally watched the new James Bond, and I remember you talking.
Did you? Yes. Yeah.
And I liked it very much. It's the first one where this male isn't addicted to the women in the bikinis with the big boobs. It's about family and bonds of affection. That's a new James Bond story. Resurrection, The Matrix is new. And I listened to Alex Collier, and he said he once talked to Keanu Reeves, who said The Matrix, that movie, yes, we've always known it's a documentary, but it's the Cliff Notes. It's far worse than The Matrix. Now, no one needs to go there, because the more you focus on something, the more of it you see. It's like S&M in sexuality. The more degraded, the more pain, the more whips, the more whatever, the more you get. You can go down that rabbit hole deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, because that's the law of the universe. So why don't we do a U-turn and see how good can you stand it? And in the physical body, what I want all women to know is that we have as much erectile erotic tissue inside the body as men do on the outside. And you can literally, through biofeedback, train yourself to experience more and more and more ecstasy, more and more pleasure, because an orgasm is a reset to your electromagnetic field. But we've been taught, don't go there. Don't go there. And what have we done? We have taken human sexuality, which is our connection with the creator. We have taken that and we've pornified it.
Yeah.
We now have an entire planet of men and young people addicted to pornography, which is a corruption of a connection with the creator and your creative instinct. But again, you can turn that around at any moment. And this is the time when we need to be turning around all of our addictions. Addiction to sex, addiction to television, addiction to, I mean, anyone who watches the mainstream media. When people say to me, did you see so-and-so on Fox News? Did you see this on CBS? It's like, are you kidding? I have not watched mainstream media in possibly 30 years. Why? I've been on mainstream media I was on all the shows. I did 8 public television specials. I know what they do. I know how they spin things. I know how they cut the footage. I know that it's all smoke and mirrors. Yes, if it's used for good. And I know that's coming. The stories that are going to be told, the theater, the music, the resurrection stories are going to be beyond anything the human race has ever seen. When music comes in, like Claire de Lune or whatever it is, that's 5th dimension coming into the 3rd. We humans are vessels for that. The lizards can't do that. What they can do is they can manipulate that, keep you afraid, keep you sad, keep you Harvey Weinstein, whatever, and make you, I mean, whoever cared about what the frickin' Kardashians were doing?
It's
Like,
unbelievable, isn't it? It is quite unbelievable. I mean, surely no one really cared. I mean, it just shows how much displacement behavior there is, where people have to fill their time. I mean, you've only got to go around the supermarket at the moment and you've got 2-year-olds in pushchairs who are on their mother's mobile phone. It's just ludicrous. It really is.
Ludicrous. Yeah. And those things are highly addictive. With my own grandchildren, when I used to go visit when they lived here, they wanted to play with my phones immediately. And then we would notice their moods would change.
Yes.
And they would become angry, and they were addicted to the phone. Now, because that's all, those devices are off limits unless they're doing a FaceTime call with me on an iPad. Other than that, no devices, because the parents see what happens. Yeah, they're amazing babysitters, but who wants Bill Gates to take care of your children?
That's such a good point. I mean, it's the worst nightmare, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
Dr. Northrup, I mean, what do you think you've learned about yourself these last 2 years?
Oh, that's the best question ever. I have learned that my whole life has led me to this moment, and that what I know and what I feel, beyond a doubt, is valuable. I have learned to trust myself on every level. And I have learned that a lot of the things that I have known intellectually, I've had to put into place. And I know that a virtuous woman is what inspires a man. A woman with big boobs, breast implants, and shaved pubic hair may be something that they go for, but it is a virtuous woman who actually inspires loyalty. So in our local groups, see, what I hear all over the country is, where are the men? Where are the men? Why aren't the men standing up? They are here. Why? Because I know that it is the feminine, it is women of virtue who inspire men to rise up. So we have all these special forces medics and guys who are in Iraq, and they need to be what's called operational.
Yes.
The men need to have a goal. And these men now, what we're doing is we're not waiting. I'm not waiting for the governor to give us permission. I had a guy come up to me. I mean, I just love this sort of young farmer. And he gives me a mason jar full of his sauerkraut. And this was at an event we had December 4th. And he says, my only goal in being here is to get you to come and speak at this particular thing that I spoke at last night. Wow. And so I thought, what the heck? I'd call. And so I did. And so we had an amazing event last night. Then he brings me, a double mason jar of sauerkraut. So this is a young man who is happily married to a woman who came from Russia, and she is a Russian translator. But what happens is, because of what I've done in my life, and because I was definitely a media figure and kind of a global figure in women's health, I can take that and inspire these men to rise up and be better husbands, better fathers, but they tell me they are inspired by this. The women's movement of the 70s, the women's movement had to happen, by the way. My mother couldn't take a loan out in her own name after my father died when she was 52. So the women's movement at some point needed to happen. What didn't need to happen was this, and this was a motto from the 70s. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Like, what we started to do was we started to say things like, well, who needs a man? Well, let me just say something. If you dance Argentine tango, which is a metaphor for life, believe me, you need a man.
Yes.
Because he knows the pleasure of a man allowing a man to take the lead. You would be amazed at the genius of men. They want to please you. Not the narcissists, not the lizards. They do not. They want to drain you, use you for narcissistic supply, throw you by the side of the road and move on. I have learned that everything I've ever taught is true. It's true. Yeah. And I've learned it in the laboratory of my own life. I've learned that the best is yet to come. Mm-hmm. I have learned that it doesn't matter if you're a fundamentalist Christian or if you read tarot cards, it doesn't matter. We are all creating this new earth together. And I've also learned that within our health freedom movement, the same personality disorders will be in there, and they'll come in for narcissistic supply, and they will try to trash your movement because of their unhealed pain bodies. And this is the best thing is that I have learned rock solid boundaries with these people. I have learned not to doubt myself. So we've got about 7 people on the no-fly list for our groups. They come in and they split. People who split groups to get power. Now, we've said for years, you can always tell when there's a borderline on the psych unit at the hospital. The nurses all start to fight with each other.
Wow.
And there's one in every family, because it's 1 in 5 people, whether it's a narcissist, a borderline, histrionic, whatever. This are all called cluster B in psychiatry. So I have learned that when I wrote Dodging Energy Vampires, which I thought was just a manual for if you're in relationship with a narcissist, right? Or a borderline, that is the microcosm for the global predators, what they're doing. So the same things that you need to do in your own life about not giving someone the benefit of the doubt. This is my dance space. This is your dance space. They are so clever. I want people to know they have malignant intuition. They know what you've always wanted to hear. Don't worry. We've got you covered. Tune in to the CDC. Tune in to CNN. We will tell you what to do. We care about you. Just follow the rules and you will be safe. Who hasn't had that happen in their own family with the family doctor? Just do what I say. Take the medicine, doctor's orders, follow along. And now we have in the United States, the average 65-year-old is on 6 prescription drugs. So they don't want you healthy. They want you addicted. So what I've learned is my entire career, particularly the stuff on the energy vampires, was my own predictive programming. 2018, I wrote the book, Dodging Energy Vampires, an empath's guide to a fulfilling life. I've learned that there's a bunch of us old soul empaths who've been gaslit probably for lifetimes. And then when we realize, oh, wait a minute, we have the power. I'm not going to try to appease you. There's what happens is so bracing. It's so bracing. The fear goes away. You're no longer, I'm not afraid of the police coming to my door.
Yes.
I'm not afraid of any of it anymore. And when you have that, in your electromagnetic field, when you realize what power is, what authority is, it's not going and violently bashing someone. That often comes from weakness. I mean, when we all saw the dogs being sent in Amsterdam, when they send in the dogs to attack the protesters, that's what they did in the 60s with the civil rights movement. Once you start sending in the dogs, and this is about health, I don't think so. I don't think so. And so now we've sent in the dogs once again in the 60s. And now here we are sending in the dogs. It signals the end.
It really does, doesn't
We're
it?
at the end when you have to resort to that. And sooner or later, you know what's going to happen. I mean, any policeman, any functionary that's under the delusion that what they're doing is the right thing. Well, I mean, I often, and by the way, I want everyone to know the comms, the communications that are going on. Anytime you hear of some official testing positive, that's a comm that they're on the way out. All right. And first of all, and by the way, let's assume that maybe you have one listener who still gets tested. Don't do that. It's the dumbest test that it was ever created. And the new test is no different. Only this is funny. It purports to tell you the difference between the flu and this thing that starts with a C. It can't do that. No test can tell you what the variants are. Oh yeah, there's one test, but it's very specific. So when they started in with the variants, you know, I talked to my doctor friends. It's like, do you know how to test? I mean, how do you, what? No,
I've been having all that
all,
conversation, Dr. Northrup, because I'm a biologist, and all my biologist friends who are completely hooked, like and sinker in the fear state and believing all this. I mean, they all work for the pharmaceutical companies. And I just sit there and I say, so we've got a WhatsApp group, and I say, no, please explain to me how to do it. Complete radio silence, it's like I'm a ghost on the group. Everything I put in is just completely ignored. I think if they knew how to delete me, they would have, but I'm not sure they know.
But isn't it weird? It's like you're in Zombieville there.
It's just unbelievable. It's just, and they're just such lovely people, but it's just, you know, years and years and years of brainwashing. So finally, I mean, I know you're so in demand and so busy. So final words of wisdom we talk a lot about being in the present moment and enjoying the now, because there's been an awful lot of when this happens, it will be all right. So what would some of your top tips for people listening now about how they can really get the most out of their lives right here, right now?
Okay, so I would decide that you're going to make 2022 the best year of your life. It's going to be the best year of my life. I don't care what happens. Let's make it the best year of my life. Like one of the guys with whom I'm doing the dating app, he said, okay, 2020 started and everyone was shutting everything down. He moved to Florida. He said, I'm going to make this the most productive year of my life. And he did. He launched like 4 or 5 companies, the most financially successful ever, just by ignoring what's going on. So what I want people to understand is you have the energy of the entire universe available to you. You get to command it through your spiritual authority. So command it to manifest for you in delightful, unexpected ways so that you begin to live the life of your dreams beyond your wildest imagination. Do a moonshot, shoot for the moon. If anything at all were possible, quickly, easily now, what would my life look like? And just write, set a timer, write it down. And then every day you do affirmations to make something welcome. Affirmations don't make something happen. They make something welcome. And that's from Michael of the Agape Church in LA. Affirmations don't make something happen. They make something welcome. So I would start to, if you haven't been exercising, if you haven't been grounding, if you haven't been drinking pure water, start little, just little things. Like I do every day, what's called a jungle 30. A funny name, makes me feel like I'm a big deal. Okay, it's 30 squats, 30 push-ups, and 30 sit-ups. and I do them in 3 sets of 10. And I just do it every day. Now, here's what's exciting. From the time I started, which was in the winter of last year to now, my squat has gotten deeper, deeper, and deeper. Now, a lot of women are facing hip replacements as time goes on. This doesn't need to happen. Your body is infinitely malleable. You create a whole new body within 7 years. The other thing I would say is stop saying your age. Never mention your age again unless you are 33 or under. No more age. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know anyone's age because it makes me put them in a cage.
Yeah.
I'm interested in biologic age. So my biologic age is 35. So I'm going to stick with that. But never give your age again. Well, at my age, I'm, and then you can brag about it. Look how good I am at but you're still putting yourself in that cage because you're still, so just stop. I don't want to hear it. I don't know my Pilates teacher's age. For me, she's 32. She'll always be 32. We've been doing Pilates together for 20 years. So she's probably, but so step out of the cage of age. Anything is possible. And begin to create the life of your dreams. Now, you can use Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life as a textbook. I have hundreds of affirmations in my book, Goddesses Never Age. Do not let your biology become a cage. We can heal anything. And let's assume that maybe you have had the biologic experimental. Go to Gene Decode's website, which is finally up, FOR service, blessforservice.org. And you can find all kinds of detoxification protocols in there. So step up to the plate. We've all humans have been poisoned through the air and the water and the food. All of us, every one of us, even if everything you've touched has been organic. So understand that in the 5th dimension where we are all headed, none of that stuff can touch you, but we're on the way. So in the physical body, while you're in this physical body, there are things that you need to do to remain healthy and happy. And the way you develop strength is you challenge yourself with heavier and heavier weights, whether that be the weight of speaking up, speaking your truth. I did a thing with Laura Eisenhower the other day and about speaking and just say, and you can do it gently. I'm not sure about this agenda, or just saying no. It's very interesting. Jessica Rose, who's an expert on the VAERS report, I listened to her being interviewed by Joe Mercola, and she's a surfer, and she got stuck in Israel on her way to Australia. She wanted to surf. She's also a genius at biostatistics. So she took on the VAERS database while she was waiting to go to Australia to surf. And he asked her, what is it like living in Israel, where all this stuff, what is it like? She goes, oh, the Israelis do what they want to do. They get around it. And so we can all, wherever we are,
yes,
get around it. Look for the people without a mask. Look for the people who are smiling. Go up to them. Take the first step. I stopped on my walk, talked to a neighbor I'd never talked to. I said, I see your Christmas tree is still up. Yeah, when I'm done, I take it out to this goat farm and the goats eat it. And I thought, oh, what a great idea. It's like that stuff.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You are such an inspiration, Dr. Northrup. You really are, because you really do walk the talk. So thank you so, so much for your time today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it and learned so much as always. And I really hope we can do this again sometime soon.
I'd love to. Wonderful to meet you, because I said you and Janine are in my space a lot. I adore you. I consider you both friends.
Thank you so much. We shall speak again soon. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.